Hi, I'm Allie Zendrian, editor-in-chief of Brand News, and this is the Financial Services News You Might Have Missed podcast. This is where I find news gems that might not have gotten their full chance to sparkle, and I dust them off a little bit. I'm joined by my trusted financial advisor and my co-host, Brandon Galisi of Galisi Financial. Brandon, how's your week been?
Week has been good. Another beautiful, sunny and 70 this week in Southern California. So loving that. Got to go to the driving range. Made some burgers yesterday too. That was solid. And over the weekend, did ribeyes for the first time on my smoker. And they were the best ribeyes that I've ever made so far. And so I'm coming off of that. Hopefully we can replicate that if I do that this weekend or the next. So overall, it's been good. But what about you? What's going on in your world?
Good for you. I have had significantly less beef in my life this week. I'm wondering, am I like anemic? I take it when you had your burger, you had no lettuce, right?
That is correct. Absolutely no lettuce for me.
Yeah. Okay, just checking. My week, it's been good. So actually we'll get into it a little bit, but yesterday I went to the FinTech is Fun Summit, which was amazing. Nicole Casperson always puts on a great show. Congratulations to her and her team. So it was nice to get into Manhattan, and having not regularly been to Penn recently, seeing Penn Station, walking up into it, and you're like, wow, it looks nice. What the heck happened here? It was a good feeling.
Nice. And just for context, because I don't live in New York City, have not gone very many times. You don't live directly in the city, but how long does that typically take you? And what kind of transportation? Is this driving? Are you taking some trains? Well, it sounds like trains with Penn Station.
Abby Sheridan from Green Rose Communications will probably make fun of me. I often drive into the city just because it's one of those, like, I just miss a train, or I feel like I want to try to control my destiny as I'm leaving, even though I'm paying the congestion tax and whatnot. But this was the rare time that I took the train, because literally the event was right on top of Madison Square Garden. So literally it would be dumb to drive. But yes, took the train, and an hour and a half, maybe.
Nice. See, that's just a different world, because it's like, how are you getting there? Obviously I'm driving or I'm flying. We do have a train out here, but not anything like that. So yeah, I was just curious. So a little bit of a commute into the city, but sounds like well worth it.
Oh, totally worth it. Yes. Very glad that I did it. But anyway, getting into this week's news, the first bit is from IDEO, a global design and innovation company that announced a new report called the IDEO Innovation Quotient. According to this, the people with the highest IQ, innovation quotient, not only understood their customers, but knew how to act on the things that these customers were telling them. They also did well, seemingly balancing both testing out new things and then consistently having that strong client experience that they're known for. Among the areas that they were talking about that these top businesses have really honed as compared to the ones with lower IQs were experimentation, ownership, and perspective. So I thought that this was interesting just from the standpoint of thinking of, we were talking last week about staffing and how you spread that into your staff. Obviously, the two of us don't necessarily know, but I would be curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to make sense. I hadn't necessarily heard of this quotient before, but the fact that they not only are knowing their customer, but they're trying out new things or potentially testing, you just have that deep understanding of who they're trying to serve and basically who their product or service is for. So when you hear it, you're like, oh, that makes sense. They know their customer a little bit better and have some systems and processes in place to then test things out with said customer to constantly grow and improve. And I really do believe that when a company focuses on, we'll call it people in general, people are going to be the employees, also on the customers as well. When you're taking care of employees, that can often trickle down into customers. Again, this is at least not from personal experience. Like you said, I don't have staff right now, but I know that the businesses that I like the most or would want to most replicate whenever it comes to me hiring, the staff's well taken care of. And because the staff's well taken care of, they typically then are going to provide a better customer experience for the end user too. And again, it just logically makes sense, but I understand obviously there's a lot more challenges and nuances once you actually get into that, because certain things have to get done and you can't just spend 30 minutes with every single customer that walks into a coffee shop, for example. That just simply couldn't be done. But but what were some of your key takeaways?
So what I loved about it, there was a quote in there talking about how to ingrain these kind of feelings into the DNA of the company. And so I think, as you and I were talking about in our previous week, it's one thing to have those actions or to have the mission statement and the vision and whatnot. And then it's another thing to actually have that trickle down into the employee and to the point that your customer feels it. So I don't know necessarily the steps that you take to get to that point, whether it's just repeated examples and, somebody seeing that really I mean everything that I'm saying in my mission statement. I didn't just, spend an afternoon and like throw words at the ceiling and this is what happened. But kudos to those companies who have it figured out. And to the point about like testing versus doing something consistently, I think there is that interesting mix. And it made me think even this afternoon when I was teaching at Adelphi, the intro to PR class, I had a special guest, shout out to Nat Berman, who came and talked to the students about social media and the concept of you just got to test. And then once you find your thing, ride it until it goes. But you'd like that kind of testing going day after day after day after day and knowing you could fail 60 days in a row and you just got to like suck it up and fail to succeed. I give people credit for that.
Right. Because again, in theory, testing makes sense. Probably not going to get terribly too many arguments. But then to your point, in practice, when it feels like you're just getting beaten up every single day, whether that's testing something with new, with actual customers, whether it's trying something out on social media, to your point, yeah, you're just getting beat down to some degree. And you never know exactly when that thing will take off or when that new feature will be the right one for your unique audience. So I think that's just, again, easier said than done, but overall it ends up being simple. Keep testing stuff. Rejection is part of the process. But again, heck of a lot easier said than done.
Yes. According to you, I think, isn't the phrase simple but not easy?
It is. Yeah, I do say that a lot.
I listen.
It's true. That's true. I probably got that from somewhere. I definitely didn't come up with that, but yeah, simple. Yeah, simple, but simple does not mean easy. Yep.
Yes. So our next piece of news is from Liquid, which is a 24/7 trading platform. It closed its seed round funding with $18 million. Liquid was designed for what they're calling the new generation of traders who operate across multiple asset classes. It seems like the power of Liquid is that you can trade many asset classes and that trading is available on Android, on iOS, and on desktops. But as we've talked about previously in the podcast, I know that we're not crazy about day trading. Would be curious what you think of a platform like this, where you've got a lot of different things going on.
I think for the right user, it could work. I mean, again, most people should not, I would just say most people should not be day trading. The statistics, if you look it up, not very many people are successful. And if you happen to be listening to this and you were one of the 1 out of 1,000 or however the math checks out, great. This does not apply to you. I think as long as, again, some people might have a hobby of, I want to get in there and do some day trading. If it's more of like a fun thing or some level of entertainment or just intellectually stimulating, for example, with a small portion of money that you could lose, go for it. Do I think it is a viable path to wealth? No, that's not what the data says. Again, that doesn't mean that someone hasn't gotten successful, but probably for most people, more of a fun thing on the side. And then you have your more serious money invested in long-term proven type strategies.
Yeah. So with the 24/7 method, so it also brought me back to, being on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange and thinking of like, well, it's really only open from opening bell to closing bell. And then, after that, like wait till the next time, but opening it up to just all hours of the day and whatnot. Is that an advantage strategically speaking?
Yeah, so I think that the fact that it's even more liquid, meaning you can access because you can trade at different times, I don't exactly know how that would impact, we'll call it more institutional type managers, because I would, if I'm making an assumption here, even in those quote unquote after hours, you're still probably looking at lower volume, lower liquidity, but obviously some liquidity is more than zero liquidity, in case you didn't put that one together for those listening. But it could help maybe in some capacity with being able to have these markets a little bit more accessible for, again, certain larger institutions. Typically in finance, we're not dealing with such tight timelines where we need to get the money yesterday. That would typically involve just some level of poor planning, because worst case, it's like, can you tell them you'll pay you in 2 days when the trade settles type of situation. Yeah, I feel like that is the most interesting part, the 24/7 liquidity aspect. But again, don't exactly know how that correlates to everything else.
Yeah. Well, we will see. Liquid, if you're listening, feel free to let us know how it works out. So our next item, normally I don't talk about things that aren't press releases, but I saw a really good LinkedIn post from Michael Kitces, and I just felt like we needed to chat about it. This is about the relationship between financial advisor well-being and the effective pricing on their clients. I'm not going to lie, I hadn't necessarily correlated these two things, but the way that he lays out the argument, it really makes sense. So I would be curious, obviously you've experienced this to a certain extent. Do you feel like, yes, it must be harder if you're making, I think on the low side, they were saying like 3,000 on a client. And then that means that you need to get, 50 to be able to have the kind of lifestyle that you want, versus I'm making 10,000. And then that means that I can have half that number. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes back to, because I think someone could take a look at this article and just think, oh, more money equals more happiness. And
Right.
to a certain extent, I think if you spend money intentionally, money isn't the thing that directly buying happiness, but you can buy experiences and buy other things that end up adding value to your life. So I'm not discounting that. But I think a lot of it too, it's business models. Because there's also a big difference in, again, let's just say it's the $3,000 per year client that has the lower lower quality of life currently, at least. That could be because too much work is being done at that price point. Let's just say two advisors are doing the exact same work. We'll call it 15 hours a year. It's coming up with an arbitrary number, although I think that has been kind of median what it takes to serve a client ongoing from other Kitces research, I think somewhere around there. So even let's just take this 15 number. Well, if you're getting paid 3,000, all things held equal, your hourly rate is going to be much lower compared to that advisor. In fact, it's going to be cut in half. That's charging $6,000 for that same client. So I think the article did talk about that being part of it, where you might feel more rewarded because yes, you're doing the similar time, similar quality of work, if you will, but you're getting compensated more for it. So maybe the enjoyment or the passion is able to be there as well. I'll pause there. I've got some other thoughts on it, but I wanted to hear what's your take though? What if so even seeing this, being a client of a financial advisor, what are your thoughts? What stood out to you?
Well, so in thinking about it, to your point, yes, like more money doesn't necessarily equal more happiness. Although, yes, if you give me more money and I can go to Disney World more times, I will be happier. I'll just be honest. I mean, look, I see it in my own experience, having clients that, there's a range of, this to this. But at the same time, I don't know if this is where this is different or whether it's just having that range and it's helpful. But I try to look at clients as it's not necessarily about how much you're paying me every month. It's about what is it that you need me to accomplish. And so if I'm getting paid the big bucks and that's getting done, obviously fabulous. But if you're not paying me as much, I still need to be able to provide that level of, you need to be satisfied. You need to have experienced something that you felt like was worth you staying with me. So I try not to correlate it in terms of, well, you don't pay me so much, so why are you eating up my time? But it's complicated. I get it.
Right. And I think too, likely even, I feel like that's a great example, even in your business, because you have clients that are paying different ranges and again, getting potentially different levels of service depending on where you're at. But likely, even in this article, the person who's charging, we'll call it $6,000 per year on average per client, it's very likely that client has more assets. Maybe they have higher incomes, or we'll just call it more complexity. That may or may not be the case, but let's just assume that it is for sake of this example. Now, whenever you're dealing with folks that are more complex, and I've noticed this myself, sometimes it can feel even more rewarding, not just because of the dollars that are coming in, but because the task that you're solving. Let's just take a simple example. Let's say I help someone find a $10,000 deduction from a tax perspective. Someone's in a small tax bracket or a lower tax bracket, that might save them $1,200. But now let's say someone's in the top bracket between state and it saves them closer to $4,000. Now, all of a sudden, it's that same knowledge that just got applied to the situation, but it was much more valuable, even on this small scale example, to the person who had more complexity. So I think sometimes those challenges are just simply more rewarding because in both cases, the same knowledge resulted in a positive outcome, which is I'm always excited about. But when you can start saving someone tens of thousands of dollars on taxes with one strategy at a certain client level, you simply can't add that level of value to them, which is oftentimes why they're not paying as much because one, they might not be able to afford it, but two, the value that you can create for them also might have a ceiling.
And I like that way of thinking about it too. I was trying to frame it in terms of, so the person who's paying less, they might be more apt to be experiencing the, not obviously the underside because they're not bankrupt, they're paying you to do a service, but might be having more economic difficulty, and so therefore are emotionally burdening you with whatever the tough situation is that then you have to listen to and whatnot. So I could understand how that builds up on a person, and I don't know how you guys just kind of go from like one meeting to the next and it's like, wow, somebody just told me like their whole life savings just went away, but now I got to go to the next thing and let's talk about college planning. I give you guys credit for that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point too, where sometimes and each situation is different, but the emotional side, where even I know from a tax perspective, working with someone who I knew didn't necessarily have stuff set aside and probably was getting ready to get surprised, unfortunately, by this bill, because I wasn't working with them last year. So we didn't have a chance to do any sort of proactive planning or projections. And I'm feeling way more stressed about it, not because I've done anything wrong. Everything's by the book, everything's done correctly, but I'm almost taking on some of the weight. And again, to be quite clear, this client did not put this on me by any stretch. This is just of my own, but because I care about the people that I'm working with, and that did cause more stress than someone else wrote pretty large check, like, oh, I've got plenty of cash, not a problem, we'll take care of it. And again, same good quality work, both people, but I felt much more emotionally burdened on one side versus the other. So I think that's a great point where likely, again, not that money is the only thing that matters, but if you're making less money, we'll say not able to add as much value just based on the same even level of advice, and you're getting some emotional burden too, obviously that's going to be a recipe for not being as happy compared to making more money, not dealing with these types of emotional situations, and your advice maybe having extra value too. So yeah, I think that's a good point.
Although it's making me realize that, and I know that you wouldn't necessarily feel this way, but now I need to work on accomplishing more great things with my finances, of course, with your help, so that I can go from more burdensome to less burdens. But I will keep that as a goal for myself, in addition to accumulating wealth. But I would be interested to see. I think it also brings to bear, I don't think that we on the financial planning consuming side think necessarily about, how much you guys are making, or, how much then is that efficient money. Did that mean that you worked a hell of a lot of time for $3,000, or did you basically just get a check each year and it was $3,000? So it was an interesting concept to have as a consumer of financial planning. I'll give Kitces credit for all of that.
Yeah, I always love reading anything that Kitces is putting out. And I think he's done this several times now and seen a pretty similar result, which is, again, unfortunate because then it does kind of put a hindrance towards trying to increase the accessibility of financial advice that we've talked about a lot. And then we see data. And again, I fully believe the data that it's saying, oh, you're less happy. So now it's like, geez, I could either build my book of business with people who are going to pay me more and probably have overall quality of life, not because of even the money side, but because the challenges and the conversations we're having, or I can make less money to try and find to serve people who might also not be as happy. Yeah, so that does, we're at a crossroads, I feel, in the industry. And how do we increase accessibility while also improving quality of life for both client and advisor?
Exactly. Anybody who can solve that, please feel free to write in, email us, whatnot. But I also wanted to bring up, so we might be talking about this next week as well, because there's actually an AtoZ communications client that is doing something related to the efficient pricing of clients. So stay tuned for that. I don't want to front run it because there's about to be a story about it and I can't ruin my own news.
Yeah, looking forward to that one then. I don't even know about it. So that sounds good.
Well, that's how secret is, that I won't even tell my financial advisor, who's bound by secrecy. But anyway, so our last piece of news brought me back to something that I experienced yesterday at the FinTech is Fun Leadership Summit. There was a session that was moderated by Candidly's founder, Laurel Taylor, and she was talking about the abysmal state of financial literacy in this country. And what brought to mind for me anyway was trying to explain compounding interest to children. So anybody who's listening, if you happen to know a good way to do it, let me know. I just bought some books on Amazon. We'll see if that helps. Getting back to the news part. So Martus Solutions is expanding its AI to help make financial data more accessible and actionable. Its embedded assistant named Smarty will let people ask questions in natural language about things like budgets, forecasts, and financial performance. So I thought that this was amazing, and I'm glad that to whatever extent this is making things much more accessible and putting financial literacy in people's faces more. Would love to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think it seems pretty cool. Being able to, instead of having to try to talk to someone riddled with jargon, having a tool that you can also trust. Because right now you could use any large language model and ask it different financial questions and get all sorts of various results. So I think trust on that side is going to be much lower because again, if it's pulling from any article on the internet, it could be some random Reddit user that said, do this investment strategy. And now an AI model is suggesting it to you, and that might not be the best. But when you've got it trained on, and it's from a legitimate company here, and you're using Smarty in your own language, I think that makes a lot of sense, because now you're going to hopefully have some natural built-in trust. Again, I definitely don't think it's going to replace human beings long-term, because this is going to be more basic advice. I'm going to assume we're not looking at, hey, at what point should I start doing detailed Roth conversion strategies? Probably not what most people are going to be asking, simply a different problem. But if it's able to increase the accessibility, because it helps someone, if nothing else, realize, hey, if Smarty could say, did you realize you spent X amount of dollars on eating out last month? And again, whether that is good or bad, neither here nor there, but that could give someone the awareness instead of having to use a budgeting app that they just simply don't use because it's so overwhelming. If they could get some quick insights into, I'll think a little bit more, I'll be more conscious of my spending. I didn't realize I spent money on these 7 subscriptions that I don't even use. Yeah. Okay, that's insightful. I can cut those because it's not adding value to my life. So I think if it's able to help with things like that, just the awareness side even, I think that'd be a big win.
Absolutely. I was honing in on another word from the announcements of actionable. So it would be great, to your point of like, look, if you're going to tell me something and then I can immediately or somewhere thereafter do something about it and make my life better, make somebody else's life better, fabulous. To your point, I feel like also if you're just giving me more information and it's like, look, that's wonderful. Like, not that either, well, you got much more financial education in school than I did, but even the little bit that I remember, it's somewhere in the back of my brain. I think because it just came across in this dry, sure, remember how to balance a checkbook. Okay.
Yeah, when's the last time you did that?
Never.
Right. Yeah. So again, I think it seems that it's going to be relevant and have the right context, and fully agree. It's just without context, without actionable advice, it's just more noise. So I'm always a big believer of data that's formatted, organized, whether that's visually, whether that's in this case of the large language model, the data that tells a story. It tells a story that you can actually understand. Where again, if it says, hey, you spent this much money on X last month, maybe you could consider spending less, or whatever that advice is, or at least, hey, be aware of this, or make sure that this is worth your time and money and energy. Where it's actionable, that's where there's all the value, versus if it's just, well, here's what you spent and nothing else, no real awareness, just whatever. Okay, well, then it's not valuable. So I think that actionable piece is very, very, very.
Thank you. So not to put you on the spot, the concept of compounding interest, it was being talked about in terms of the Trump accounts, which my kids are too old, so it's not like they are part of that. But I was trying to explain to my daughter yesterday, we talk about things like, what is the mum budget? The mum budget is this big. How much is the budget for Mateo and Cecilia? It's this big. Why is mum's budget very small? Well, because I try to leave your money alone so that it can continue to grow and grow, and mum just scrapes by on whatever it is that she needs. But I can't think of a way to explain to a child, and in this case she's going to be 7, compounding interest. I'm like, I don't know, is there a way to like put her favorite snack to, I don't know how to do it. If anybody knows, please tell me.
The only thing, have you seen those videos? I promise this is related. Have you seen the videos where I think you give a child a cupcake and then you say, hey, if you don't eat this cupcake when I come back, you'll get another cupcake or something like that, where I know that one's more about, I think, probably delayed gratification. So maybe, again, I don't have one fully fleshed out, but maybe something along those lines. Like you could either spend it and have the 1 cupcake today, or in a week, 2 weeks. I don't know what kind of time frames work for the different age groups, but sometime in the future, 7 cupcakes, 10 cupcakes. I don't know why we're on the cupcake side. I guess I brought that part up, but something to that effect, where it still is really a delayed gratification thing. I mean, that really is what compound interest is. Even when I showed it to a smart client in their mid-20s, it almost doesn't seem believable, because when you first start with compound interest, you first start investing, nothing happens. It feels like you're just putting money in. Even if it's grown, it's only a small amount. But then when you look at it over the long run, if you're just looking at it visually, wouldn't show this to a 7-year-old. This is more of an adult one, but you start to see that curve exponentially increase over time. That I think is helpful for adults. So something about like 1 cupcake, 1 food item, 1 toy, whatever else. I don't have kids yet, so whatever kids are into. So you come up with a maybe better example, put some color to it, or more in the future. So kind of a delayed gratification, but also in like, hey, if you don't spend it now, that's why you're going to have more toys later, kind of a thing. That's my thinking out loud right there.
And I appreciate it. And I think that is a good way to do it. And she responds well to cupcakes. So I don't know if I told you that or you were just on a cupcake thing, but it worked.
I like cupcakes. I'd probably respond well for cupcakes too.
Well, thank you as always. We always have good conversations. And then in addition to that, we try to figure out children's financial literacy. So saving the world one problem at a time.
Yeah, we'll take it. No, this was fun as always. Thanks, Allie.
Thank you. Cool.